I could should I put it into automatically get it to go to? I'm recording now, so I'll just do it this way. It'll be, let me put it into live on YouTube. And then we can trim it over there. That'll be over here. I want it on that one. Okay. Webinar 2.
Okay.
Go live. Okay, we're going live.
Okay.
Here we go. We are live. Okay, preparing live stream. Okay. Okay, that's it. We're going live, so now I can just put it on mute so I don't have to hear it. All right. Got it. Okay, great. That's taken care of. And
What are we doing?
I'm just getting the YouTube live, streaming it so I don't have to. I've got two. I'm streaming it to my computer and to YouTube for a backup.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, because we had that problem another time where YouTube didn't get it right. Okay, I'm gonna let everybody in. Admit all. Admit all. Here they come. And I'm going to just make it. Okay, great. Dan's coming too. Wonderful. Welcome everybody. Hi there. As you come on in, great. Hello there.
Hi, Shane.
Hello. How you doing, Michael?
Good.
All right. So we have some new people here that haven't visited us before. We have Claudia, and we have someone with a phone number here from 419-878-9647. Who's that? Okay, let me see. All right, maybe they'll come in. Dan, what's that?
He's muted.
Okay, yeah, they're muted, but you can unmute if you want to unmute there. That phone number 419-878-9647 and say hello to us. We'd love to know who you are. And Dan, welcome, Dan.
Hi, this is Tammy.
Oh, Tammy is your name?
Yes.
Tammy, are you also? I see there's a Tammy Jackson. Is that you? One of the same?
That's me.
Okay,
yes,
so
you're me.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Tell us a little bit. Where are you from?
I'm with Triad Technologies in Maumee, Ohio.
Oh, wow. What do they do?
We are, we do pneumatics and hydraulics.
Oh, cool. And what do you do there?
I am customer service.
Outstanding. Hey, you know what? As I always say about that is that when, the definition of being in business is having a customer. And, once you got a customer, you better take care of them. So you've got the main job. So that's great. And we have Dan. Dan, how you doing? You want to say hello? Haven't met Dan yet. You go ahead and unmute yourself, Dan.
Okay. Hey, how's it going, guys? What's up?
How you doing, Dan? Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, very nice. All right. So and what company are you with?
Spectrum.
All right. What you do over there?
I'm a tech support person, so I do a lot of quick fixes and troubleshoots and maintain customer relations, calm down a lot of angry people.
Oh, okay. That is a talent. I'm telling you, man.
Amen, brother. Amen.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you here, and I'm so happy that you've come to join us. And we have Claudia. Hi, Claudia. Want to say hello? You can unmute yourself.
Sorry. Hi.
Hi. Where are you calling from?
I'm from Mexico, but I live in Germany.
Oh, wow.
I think I say the another Zoom webinar. I live in Germany.
Oh,
and
wow.
I have a lot of experience in customer service.
Wow. Well, welcome here. I love Mexico. I'm originally from Southern California, and We used to go down there all the time, man. I'm a big fan of Mexican food. So if you want to eat,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, you got Mexicans have the best food, I'm telling you. So
I know.
all right. So generally how I just explained to everybody is how everything works here is that it's a pretty, we're kind of like a family over here. You'll be able to speak and ask your questions. And Shane here, what he does is he gives over his information. It's a teaching more than a webinar here. And then at the end, we'll have an offer for you that if you guys are interested in, if you're qualified for that offer, we'll explain it to you. And so now you know what the whole procedure is. We're not going to end up here with this big sales pitch. We're basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to be helpful within this particular time period when everybody is, we're all in the same boat basically. So, but yet business has to keep going, and it will, as we move forward, we're going to have to make some changes. And Shane has been working with companies all over the world now. He's in fact, he has a history of real success of helping companies with their culture and to improve their bottom line, which is really is the having the employee experience, which really is the main thing for the great customer experience. So I'll let Shane explain it to you. He'll do it better than I can. Shane, want to take it from here?
All right, thanks, Abraham. All right, everybody, nice to see some of you again. Nice to meet a few new people. Hopefully everyone's doing well out there. I know that these times are a little unusual. So I really do appreciate you joining us today. So we're going to talk about values today. We're going to talk a little bit about my culture hacker philosophy, and really just talk about how to leverage values. They're really important mechanisms that really drive a lot of things within an organization, or at least should. And when we go out to a lot of organizations and in our research, we really found that it's one of those areas that hasn't been paid enough attention to. So we're going to talk about that today. A little bit about my background, originally a Kiwi. I'm really based out of the hospitality industry. I worked for about 10 years with the Ritz-Carlton in the US and Asia. And then we've been working with different organizations for the last 15 years, obviously in hospitality, but also out of hospitality. A lot of different aviation, automobiles, cruises, retail, residential, financial. And a lot of the work that we've been doing was focused originally around customer experience, journey mapping, and really working to help organizations build a better customer experience strategy. What we've really veered towards is that a key part of that strategy has to be your people strategy. And so that's where we've really cut the emphasis about the focus on culture and how some of these different mechanisms really influence culture and how people feel about what they do and who they do it for. So as I said, today we're going to talk about one of the real fundamental mechanisms that I think doesn't get enough attention, and that is values. I want to kind of give a little bit of background into some of the philosophy. Some of you that have been to a couple of these seminars have probably seen this before, but it's kind of important that we reiterate and kind of start at the beginning. And the beginning for me, as I sort of said, was in hospitality with the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. And there was this saying that I put up in front of you that we used to talk about every day, and it used to be up on our walls. And it's such a simple one. It's a hospitality axiom. An axiom is a truth. And it says a person with a great attitude will always give great service. A person with a poor attitude will always deliver poor service. And what we were really focused on was understanding that you can have the nicest property, you could have the nicest products, services, food, and all of those things. But if the delivery is by someone with a poor attitude, then they just see the overall service interaction, and ultimately customer experience is poor as well. So this is kind of the foundation of a lot of the things that we ultimately talk about today. Where does that lead us up to? Well, culture is just a collective mindset and attitudes. And so we often talked about one person's attitude and the impact on the guest. But as we started to veer and towards understanding people and researching about employee experience, we started to see a lot of this conversation around culture. And we really wanted to understand more about what culture truly was. And it's about mindsets and attitudes, but it's the collective. What does that mean? It means what the team is ultimately feeling about what they do and who they do it for. We know that some people will just have bad days. Can't help that. But what you want to always ask yourself, and this is something we always asked ourselves as managers, was every day we'd ask collectively, how does our group feel? And it was our job as a manager to make collectively them feel good. And if something was off, we'd work really hard to try and turn that around. I think it's really timely because let's face it, there's a lot of people that aren't feeling too good out there in the world today, a lot of things going on, a lot of unknowns. And so what I sort of have been talking a lot about recently is that it's just so important that we focus on culture, and that as leaders, we step up and really start to understand what we can do to help the collective group feel better at what they do. We think culture is important because, you know, how you feel about what you do and who you do it for, that attitude is really going to manifest itself in the behavior. So, you know, again, how someone performs, how much productivity they do, how well they take care of a customer, that always comes from how they're feeling. And so those behaviors, I think it's important, is that they're really defining the reputation of a company today in our very transparent, social media driven world. You know, and as I said, we did some research with TripAdvisor maybe a few years ago. What was interesting is that when we looked at TripAdvisor feedback, as people talk about their vacations and restaurants and all these things, 73% of that feedback was about employee attitudes or the employees. So it's really important to understand that, you know, when you're talking about customer interactions and customer service, how your employees feels is by far, we think, the most important piece. And understand now that in today's world that it's really impacting your reputation. And as I say there, reputation is your brand, whether you like it or not. So as I said, company culture, this way that people feel, is defined by a number of different mechanisms, activities, and managers that the employee comes into contact with. And that's why we've sort of, through our research and experience, we've focused in, there's really 11 or 12 really big sort of mechanisms that we focus in on. And again, a lot of them sort of have listed here. And what we're going to do over the coming weeks is we're actually going to address quite a few of these. Some of you would have joined us for our last webinar, where we actually focused on number 10, leadership. So each of these is kind of a different focus. And what we try to do is, as we address or think about these, is we really look at it from the employee's perspective, things that you might be able to do, use some best practices to help you deliver overall a better experience. And so today we're going to talk about what I always say is the 11th mechanism, and that's values. Even though if you read my book and you see a lot of what I've written about, I would argue that probably value is the first thing that you would focus for in terms of creating a really great culture and delivering an employee experience. And sort of a lot of people sort of look at me like, well, values are usually just a bunch of words. And I think that's the point I try to make, is that in many organizations, values are just some philosophical BS. They're really not treated with the type of respect or the type of focus that they deserve, because as you're going to see today, for me, values is absolutely critical in everything that they do. So values, you know, listen, it defines how work gets done. And I want to really emphasize how. So much of what we do in organizations when it comes to performance is we focus on what gets done. What I'm really interested in is how work gets done. People might get the best scores, or they might be really productive, but if they do it in such a way that ticks everybody else off around them, then that has a negative impact on the collective culture. So values define how people should act and interact with each other. And what I would say is, remember this, they are the price of entry into your organization. We talk extensively about the importance of cultural match, which means people should have similar values to the organization values to help them be successful. So this is really critical for me because, you know, the whole idea of values and finding a match is to understand that there's two types. There's what they call the uniquely you values. These are your values, the thing that you hold dear to yourself. And I want you to think about those. What are those things that you kind of live your life by? There might be 4 or 5 really important ones. And then you want to match those up with the organization's values. The perfect world is when your values match up with the organization's perfectly. That is what we call a perfect match. But when it comes to values, it becomes the price of entry. And I would argue the price of exit as well. Meaning values is kind of the should be like that kind of gatekeeper of whether or not how someone gets in, because they're a really good determinant of whether or not someone's going to be comfortable, confident, and successful in your organization. Because it also defines how things get done. I think how is very important. We find that many times how people behave, which can be in contradiction to just doing good things, being kind, and all of those things, what we find is that the values should be being utilized more than anything else in terms of having exit conversations. People that do not align up well and don't adhere to how people should treat each other, I think it's really important that that becomes a bigger topic in organizations. So for us, values becomes really important. The problem is, as I sort of said, most of the time values are some philosophical BS. Why do we do that? We do a lot of organizational culture assessments. And so what we know is when we go in and we look at values, we can tell pretty quickly whether or not values are ingrained in the organization. How do we do that? Well, we should be able to see them in your hiring process. Do you use them as part of behavioral interviewing? We should see them referenced in your orientation process. Do you talk about them? Do you talk about them as a priority? Do you use them as a way to recognize people, to manage performance? Do your leaders talk about them? All of these things are really important because this will tell us how serious you are about your values. And unfortunately, what we often find is that the values are just something that people puts on the wall or puts on their website, ticks the box, and it's literally philosophical bullshit. I'm going to do a little test with you just to kind of have a bit of fun, maybe just to highlight this. I'm going to put up on a screen, and hopefully you can all see this, and I'll sort of read it out. I'm going to put some company values up on the screen. And I want you to try and work out, someone's drawing on that, I want you to kind of work out if in fact you can guess which company is talking about. Now I'll give you a clue. The company did something bad in the last sort of 5-7 years or so. So it's a company that did something bad. And so what I want to highlight is the contradiction. So this company said we assume responsibility for the environment, we act with integrity. Now, I'm betting that you probably don't know this company and their values verbatim, but I want to ask you if anybody can guess which company I am talking about, meaning a company that got it probably did something completely opposite to this. Anybody want to come off mute and kind of put it out to the group of who you think this might be?
I think BP.
What was that?
BP.
I'm sorry.
British
British
Petroleum.
Petroleum.
Oh, petroleum, British Petroleum. That is a great, great guess. No, but that's an excellent one. Anyone else want to take a guess?
Volkswagen.
Volkswagen. That is so well done. Look at that. Claudia, was that you because you're in Germany? So think about this. Volkswagen, if you remember, they were fudging or making up their emissions so that they could get passed into America and pass all the emissions testing. So this is it. This is one of their values. We assume responsibility for the environment. We act with integrity. And yet they fake the emissions. So talk about in complete contrast. And so to Volkswagen, I say, your values are bullshit. All right, let's give you another one. And again, I don't know where this came from the screen. It's bizarre. It's like something's written onto it. We strive to be recognized by our stakeholders as setting the standard among the world's great companies for integrity and principled performance. Anyone want to take a guess at this? I'll tell you, they're in the financial services space.
Wells Fargo.
Oh, look at that. It is. It's our friends at Wells Fargo. If you remember what they've done recently, my goodness, and they can't keep out of their own way. Again, 5 years ago, they were faking bank accounts. Again, they've even done more stuff. I'm not sure if you've read in the last couple of weeks, but they were actually reporting people who were not paying their rent or mortgage on time, and they were getting additional fees off them by stating that people weren't paying their mortgage as part of a government fund or grant. So there is our friends at Wells Fargo. Let's do one more, just out of interest, more recent. We value human life and well-being above all else and take action accordingly. We are personally responsible and collectively accountable for safety at all levels, so safety is important, for our teammates, our passengers, and those who service our products. Anyone want to guess who got in trouble a couple of years ago and completely...
United.
No,
Airlines.
it wasn't United, though. That's a really great guess. It was something even worse than United. You're in the right industry. Company called Boeing. Anybody know why Boeing, we can call bullshit on them in Boeing?
The 757.
Michael's nodding his head. Why would we say that, Michael?
Well, I think because of what happened to the Ethiopian Airlines and its related issues.
Correct. And again, basically there were two cases where they knew there were safety issues. 2 airline crashes, again, both accounting for multiple, even hundreds of deaths. And so again, they knowingly knew there was a safety issue with one of their aircraft types. And again, they have not been released back into the system since. So here's my message out of all this. Be careful about bullshitting your values. Because if something goes wrong, here's 3 big companies, the media, whoever it is, or people like myself are going to call you accountable on this. So don't just make them as some philosophical BS, because you cannot do that and have integrity in what you're going to do. So let's kind of talk about values and what some of the problems that we see out there today, because it's important to understand that while many companies have values, there's kind of 5 or 6 reasons of why they're not being held in such high regard. The first one is that they just don't trans well in our modern society, meaning values become outdated at times. The values may have been appropriate, and particularly their behaviors 20, 30 years ago, but as companies have started to evolve and younger generations have started to become more the majority in our workplace, what we're seeing is that some values just don't translate. And so you always must ask yourself, are your values relevant? The second one is values are not promoted, so no one knows if they even exist. This is important. Companies will put values up on their website. We will go in and ask employees what their company values are, and they have no idea. It's amazing to us. Again, all it is just ticking the box for their company guidelines, for their shareholders' books, and really nobody cares about them. Third, there's too many values. What do I mean by that? We work with some companies and they'll have like 20 values. It's too many. It's like, well, wait up, which ones do we pay attention to? We actually worked with a group, it was great. They did, before we got involved, they did a couple of executive retreats, and they're designed to come up with their corporate values. And this is for a large organization. Basically what they did is they brainstormed, and every idea that an executive put forward ended up on the value sheet. They had, at one stage, 40 values, and then they fine-tuned that down to something like 32, and then they got it to 24. 24 different values about what's important, of how people should act and interact. It's too much. What we want to see is companies put a stake in the ground and say, what's most important for you? Not just every cool word that is out there in the business world today. Values are vague. One of the most important things is that values alone actually have very little value. It's actually the measurable behaviors under them that are observable and tangible that are really important. So for instance, if you have a value and just say service, all right, that's open to interpretation. Everybody can interpret it as they want, unless there's some really clear descriptors or behaviors about what great service looks like, so people are more aware of what the expectations are. The big one, managers don't support them. I think one of the interesting pieces is so many organizations, we go in and the employees don't know what the values are. Managers may know, but they do nothing with it. And so what we say is they don't really support it. They don't talk about it. They don't utilize it. They don't leverage it. And so as a result, because managers don't talk about it, employees don't pay attention to it. And then the final one, and we've touched on this, is that your values aren't in line and included with all the other employee mechanisms, meaning I don't see it as part of your interview process. I don't see it as part of your orientation or onboarding process. I don't see it as part of your performance coaching process. I don't see it as part of your recognition process. I don't see you communicating about it. I don't see the leaders talking about it. All of these things lead me to believe that, guess what? Your values are some philosophical BS. And that's what I want you to understand today. They can be leveraged to be so powerful because I go back to how we define them. It's how work gets done. And if you're going to talk about performance today, and everyone wants to talk about performance, no longer can you just talk about what gets done, the results. You got to talk about how work gets done. And that's why for us, values is so very, very important. So what we do is we work with a lot of different organizations, sometimes building values from scratch, refreshing values. And I wanted to kind of talk about just some of the sort of the lessons to think about when it comes to your values. If you're in this process or about to undertake it, the first thing we say is get your staff involved. One of the things that's really important is that many times the values are created in a vacuum. The owners or the executive team usually lock themselves away in some retreat, come up with these great ideas, and then roll them out over the whole company. Culture is the collective hearts and minds of your employees and the group of people. Therefore, the values that define how they act and interact, you should be getting feedback from your employees about what they think is important. The thing that I find interesting is that there's a lot of conversation that the younger generation of workers aren't loyal, aren't committed, not engaged as much. That's bullshit in itself. What they want to do is they want to be challenged, they want to be involved, but they got to have something worth to be involved with. What we've found as a best practice is going to the employees and asking them, hey, questions like, if you had to describe the best employee that you work with, what are the 3 or 4 qualities that they would have? That one simple question we've asked in organizations around the world. And from that, you're going to get back the qualities that make up the ideal employee. And again, that's just a simple way to come up with that, but engage your employees. I touched on this, less is more. When we develop values, we start with a maximum of 4. And this means that there's a lot of ideas that come in, and we make people to make choices. We get them to go from their favorite 10 to their favorite 6 to their favorite 4. The reason we say 4 is that it's manageable. And second of all, what we say, and again, it's the bottom point, be willing to challenge your values and behavior after 12 months. What that means is you sort of come back and go, did we miss anything that's important to our organization? So what happens is often companies will come up and end up having 5 values. But when we go through the process of refresh or building, we always go, we're going to start with 4. And it really forces companies, managers, executives, employees to make some tough decisions. Because what I would also say is that in our personal lives, the uniquely you values, you've already made those tough decisions. When we work with groups and we've looked at research, when people say that they have 20 values that they hold dear that guides their life, we call bullshit. They don't. They have 3 or 4 that really matter. And what's happened is that through a period of time, you've really become, these are my core tenets of how I live my life. And so we want the same process to happen in an organization. And then probably the most important one, every value has to have measurable, observable, and tangible behaviors. Let me give you an example. The value may be creative. Yeah, organizations love creative as one of its values. But the behaviors are probably more important. What does be creative mean? Be creative mean as a behavior. Be open-minded to new ideas. That simple statement, I can tell whether or not Abraham there is open or not to new ideas. He's either open or he shuts them down. So it makes me very easy to come back and say, Abraham, one of our values is about being creative. Well, to be creative, we have to be open to new ideas. And the way that you just shut down Jenny there in that last meeting was really quite disappointing. It didn't adhere to our values. So when you can point to a specific behavior, it's probably the most important lesson when it comes to bringing your values to life. And as we said, be willing to challenge them. Every 12 months, just come back and say, hey, are our values alive and well in the organization? Now, we work with a lot of companies. Some of your companies may do a lot of employee satisfaction surveys, pulse surveys. What is fascinating to me is that there are so few companies ask their employees to define the values and ask about relevancy. They're not willing to challenge that important part of the business. So I urge you to think about that. Always, at least every 12 months, ask the question to the employees. Are our values relevant? Do they make a difference in your daily workday? And if there was a value that was missing, what should it be? And it's amazing. It gets you feedback. The perfect world is it comes back and they really don't have anything new to offer. That means that's still in a good space. But it'd be amazing how quickly times are changing. And I would suggest in 2020, maybe one of the most important years to go back and ask about your values. Because are your values translating to a virtual or remote workforce, as many of us have been forced into? So great opportunity this year to go look at values. The kind of piece that I will talk about is that, hey, once you have your values, a big part of it where we see a lot of organizations fail is how they introduce them and how they roll them out. So the thing for us is I want you to remember this. The most important group to immerse in the values is your managers, not your employees. It's your managers, like everything else. They have to be comfortable and confident in the values. So many companies we've seen roll out their values and they just roll out the employees first and they assume that the managers get it. Managers don't get it. If they're not comfortable and confident in something, know this, they will not get behind it, and you need your managers behind it. So when we're rolling out values, a month before the employees even see anything, we introduce it to the managers. We talk about its definition, the behaviors, and most importantly, why each of those values are important. And by the way, we test the managers to make sure that they are all able to get up and speak intelligently and with believability about what the values are about. So we take that part very seriously. I've touched on this 2 or 3 times. I'm going to reiterate again. For values to have, and again, excuse the pun, value, they must be incorporated into your selection, orientation, performance, coaching, communication, and recognition processes. They need to be alive and well. We just are doing a culture assessment right now of a really cool, totally get it hospitality organization, very high-end luxury, totally get it. And they're very big on values, very big. They have 4 values. It totally makes sense. But as we went through now, we're going through all the other mechanisms. We don't see any behavioral questions that they ask in the interview process. We looked at their performance review. The values aren't mentioned once. We looked at their recognition system. Don't see the values anywhere. So what that tells us, again, is that the values haven't been ingrained and are a part of that everyday life. And again, this is something that it's so easy for us to see. And we're telling you now, if your values are going to have meaning, they need to be incorporated into these other mechanisms. And then just remember, when it comes to your employees, develop training and marketing materials to orient employees. One of the things that must happen is if you are rolling out new values, you must put all employees through a reorientation. One, it's a great way to kind of get them excited and kind of take them back to some basics. But it's so important that don't just roll them out in a memo, just don't, kind of put them up on a wall and say, hey, we got new values, everybody go at it. Really focus on some training about how to interact and understand and to see the behaviors displayed for the values that you have. So just a couple of ideas there. Remember also that when you're rolling out your values or introducing them, one of the most important things that we say is be ready to explain why. We do a lot of training, and it's the first thing we do. When we roll out values, we create any training, we go, okay, the most important thing the employees need to understand is why each of these values are important. Why is creativity important for our organization? Well, we're a marketing and advertising firm. One of our clients require that of us. It's one of the most important tenets that has allowed us to evolve. And over the past few years, all of these things come out, but be ready to tell your employees why. Second, explain what's expected. I often call this why and what. What's expected, and that means explain to them the behaviors by position and use some examples. So when employees go through their onboarding process, you should be able to provide examples of when a value comes to life for that position and say, hey, this is a behavior where that would kind of happen. My creative, and again, it's only because we're working with a huge advertising company on this, so creative is top of mind. But for example, creativity is the value. The behavior is be open-minded to new ideas and suggestions. And as we said, is the behavior. The training that we took them through, or what's expected, is one of the examples was for the sales team, when they are in a meeting with clients, they don't react to a client's idea no matter how dumb it is. Because think about it, we're creative, there is no bad ideas in creativity. And yet sometimes when they would react in a meeting to someone's idea, that went completely against what our value was all about. So being able to explain by position what's expected is important. And then, of course, I kind of indicated, test my managers. They have to be believable, and they have to be able to lead by example. If your values are to truly have credibility, like all things in culture, it often starts with the managers. So keep that in mind. They have to be believable, and they have to be leading by example, which is why we kind of give them that month beforehand to let them adjust any of their behaviors, because here's what happens. You roll out values. The first thing the employees do, I talk about this a lot, they boss watch. They're going to watch the manager, and they're going to say, all right, they just talked to me about creativity. They said I have to be open-minded to new ideas. Wow, I just gave my manager a new idea, and they completely shut me down and said that was stupid. So you've got to make sure that there's integrity in your values, and a lot of the time that comes from the managers. Listen, at the end of the day, what I would say is, and we start this off, is that there's so many important mechanisms that when it comes to delivering a great employee experience, I really think foundationally, values is the most important. It defines how. Again, I want to reiterate, every organization focuses on performance. Performance used to be about what did you deliver for me lately? It was about the results, the sales results, the feedback, all of those things. How you do it is now what I believe most important. We work with a large automobile organization, about 500 dealerships in America. We were going around, we were doing a lot of coaching at the dealerships and assessing cultures. One of the things is car sales. I talk about one of the most cutthroat, old school, very traditional sort of approaches to business, actually. But anyway, car salesmen. You probably have your own bias against them and immediately have thoughts about what they're like. And again, I can tell you that within a dealership, the top salesman is the top dog. We went in and there was one large dealership had 20 salespeople in the team. As we went in, we're doing some interviews, kind of working our way around. And what we saw is, first of all, as we walked in, up on the wall was the plaque of the Salesman of the Year. We went down, and for the last 10 years, it was the same guy. Wow, that's pretty impressive. We were looking forward to talk to this guy. This guy must have been kind of something really special. Again, top salesperson, 10 years running. So again, we knew what was being delivered. If performance was that, this guy, John, was it. What happened is we started to talk to a lot of the other sales people as his name kept coming up time and time again. As it came up, he was described as a jerk, a dick, you name it, he was called it. And we were like, well, wait up, what's going on? You see, John only cared about what was delivered. He backstabbed. He did every trick in the book. He would take sales away from people. It was incredible what this guy was getting up to. And we went to talk to the general manager and says, hey, I think you got a problem with John. And the general manager looked at us like we were the stupidest things in the world. He's like, what are you talking about? He's my number one sales guy. He's the guy I want everyone to be like. He is the man. And we're like, well, I'm going to tell you now that your man is destroying the culture of your dealership. The general manager thought we were idiots. Sent us out, even sent a note to corporate to say, this is the stupidest thing that someone's ever said to me. Why are you engaging these guys? Thankfully, the corporate team knew what we were about. 3 months later, we got a note from the corporate team that general manager wanted us to go back. And we sort of like, all right, what happened? Well, the general manager had to fire John. Apparently, he sexually harassed quite blatantly a fellow employee. And again, it went to the police so that the general manager had no choice but to let this person go. What was fascinating is we sort of went back in and the general manager was still kind of feeling bad about it, is that we sort of sat down with the rest of the group, kind of did some of our training, did some of the things we were talking about. What was fascinating is in 90 days, the overall sales for the dealership was above 10%. So they were ahead as a group 10%. And what had happened is that the other 19 people on the team who were being kind of deflated and bullshitted around and were feeling very frustrated, they started to perform. We took the top performer out and the team overperformed anything they'd done previously before. So that's my message about values. How you do work today is becoming more important, I believe, than what you do. And in today's very uncertain times, there's so many considerations going on. That is why I think it's the most important topic. For a business to truly be great, to be successful, they've got to think about how they do business more than anything else. And that when you anchor your company in values, as Indra Nooyi from PepsiCo says, it makes your ship unsinkable. Even when there is a crisis, even when something goes wrong, no one can take you down because at the end of the day, you're aligned and you're brought together by these common bonds, these values, these way of doing things, or the traits that truly define how we work. So that was kind of my piece for the day. Well, hopefully, you kind of get the whole idea of values. So as always, I want to open it up to sort of the audience and sort of say, hey, comments, questions that you might have, anything that you want to sort of feed out to the team regarding values or questions that you might have, now is the time to do it. So we'll kind of open it up. Abraham, I'll let you be kind of the ringmaster of saying who's got what question next.
Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to make a comment myself. One of the things that when I did the CX Success Summit, and I remember I was interviewing, I think it was Ron Kaufman, And one of the main things, what was interesting was how things mean different to the same word can mean so many different ways, so much things to so many different people. So if you said, for example, trustworthy, and I'll ask everybody here, how would you define that? Trustworthy, for example. So if you have a company that doesn't define the values and are not on the same page of what that means together and believes that, not just going, yeah, trustworthy. Yeah, it means, like the Boy Scouts, trustworthy, kind, loyal, all that stuff like that. So how do you feel about that in terms of when you're working with these people and you're asking them, what does this mean to you? How many, are you often surprised about how people see things different?
No, I mean, you shouldn't be surprised at all, but it's a really great point because people do interpret. That's why I'm saying if the word is, and I keep using this word creative, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so the key part is to be able to give some definition of behavior so people are able to understand what the behavior looks like. So, I always say begin with the end in mind, being able to paint a picture of what the word means to you, because it does mean different things to different organizations. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it can be so broad, but the behaviors by position is the key to really getting people to understand, how does this impact me? And let's face it, that is what the number one question I think most employees or anyone has out there. How does this impact me? Employees want to be successful. They don't go to work to be, screw up and kind of do nothing. They come to be successful. Teach them how to be successful. Give them, I used to call it the rules of the sandbox. The rules of the sandbox came when I had young children. And the young kids, they sit in the sandbox and they're playing with toys, and kids come along and their parents teach them the rules of the sandbox, and everyone just gets on famously. Then there's that one kid who turns up. All of a sudden, a minute later, everyone's kicking and screaming and there's toys being thrown out. And you kind of go, damn, why didn't the parents teach them the rules of the sandbox? And it was frustrating. And what's happened is a lot of organizations don't teach their employees the rules of the sandbox. So what happens? People come on and make up their own rules, particularly our younger generations, ladies and gentlemen. They are the first. Millennials was the big start of it. They're like, wait up, no one's told me the rules. I'm going to make up my own rules. And what happened is you started to have that conflict with older generations and younger generations. The older generations would say, well, you guys don't have work ethic. You guys don't know how to do things. The young one says, you didn't teach me the rules of how to get things done. I just did it the best way, the quickest way, and with the most tech I could, because that's how I grew up. And so teaching them the rules of the sandbox, I think, is just such an important piece of this, which is your values, and being very definitive about what it means by position, absolutely critical.
You have Dan here. He says, thank you. I like to talk. It confirms a lot of the best practices of what to do and not to do.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Dan. And as I said, I don't think it's that difficult, but I will tell you that a lot of organizations seem to make it that way. Why? They don't make it a top priority in their organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think I spoke to you before about at the end of a person puts their whole life into a job. Well, a lot of people now bounce around from job to job, but I think that maybe they wouldn't bounce around from job to job if they found a place that they could share the same values and good values. They would say, hey,
the research supports it.
Oh, really?
Research says it. What is even more important, young people are coming back to companies. So and that's for a different topic, but don't get upset when young people move on from a job or go to it for a different challenge. But what's interesting is that research has now seen that people that really align with the values will come back to that company. So listen, this is really important. Our younger generations are aligning. They are doing more of the selecting of where they're going to work than companies are these days. And a big part of it is, does this company have the same values that I do?
Right. I mean, this is the tribe mentality, in a positive sense, saying, hey, these are my people here, and like I mentioned before to you in another conversation, just a private conversation about at the end of, say, 30 years of work or however long they get the gold watch, I always said, that they should have, at the end of their tenure of their work, they should have a golden heart, where the company actually helped them to become a better person. and they helped other people become better people. So the sum of your work wasn't that you worked there for X amount of years. It's the sum of your work is that what kind of a person you became. And that company, and that's why culture is so important. And getting in with the right people is because getting with the right culture will make you a better person. So.
It's big. I often think about that with Starbucks. If you are interested in culture, obviously most of you will know the Starbucks brand, but read the book about it. What I found interesting is that Starbucks, and you may not realize this, Starbucks, when they come to their recruitment strategy, you often go, well, how does someone get to work at Starbucks? Starbucks puts very limited criteria around who can work at a Starbucks. What you'll actually find is there are a lot of people that have come straight out of school, very little college education, can come from a variety of backgrounds. They are open to hiring people who've been incarcerated before, which is very powerful. All of this means is that what Starbucks understood was that a lot of the people that were employed there didn't have highly sophisticated life skills. And so what they do is they invest a lot of training on stress management, how to deal with upset customers, how to put a smile on your face when you're not feeling like it. All of this based around service. But what they found is that why people from Starbucks become so loyal to working for them is that because they learned life skills with them, and those skills at work really do help them in every aspect of their life. So it's really powerful when that comes to light.
Claudia here's asking a question. She's asking, how can I support the company values when I think my boss isn't following them?
Listen, you're touching on it. That is one of the biggest problems. I already said, managers do not follow the values, and it's a shame. Here's what I would say about that. First of all, ask yourself, do the company values align with your values? Which means you probably act in that way anyway. And this is something that I think is really important. If you say, like, they really don't align with my values, I would in some way kind of say, are you in the right company? And I mean that very lightly, and I'm saying, hey, you go and change, but it's become really important today. The more aligned your values are with your company's values, the more natural you'll be. If you find yourself having to work really hard to be someone that maybe you're not, I would suggest maybe there's a better fit out there. What I do know is there are a lot of managers in place today who have been there for a long period of time, who have got away with not making values a priority, who have not really focused on the how. They're like the general manager of the car dealership I talked about. It was really just about what. So the answer to it is, hey, if that is who you are, then just always be true to yourself. And if you're true to yourself and it happens to line up with the company values, you're in a great position. And never let, just because someone around you doesn't adhere to them, to take you away from your values. When you feel very connected with a company, you'll probably feel like their values are your values anyway. So unfortunately, you probably can't do something with that manager. What I would say though, do not let him or her impact the way that you feel about your organization and the values. And by the way, if it comes up, and again, I would go larger and go, how often and how important are values to the other managers, the executives, the owners? Are they exhibiting it, or is it kind of generally that, hey, we have values, but no one above the organization really, puts any value behind it? Use the pun again. That's a shame, and that's where you get companies like the Wells Fargos, the VW, Boeing, where you know what, values are just some philosophical BS, and recognize that. And you know what, people are starting to ask themselves today whether or not that's the company they'd work for.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about the CEO, right? Where everyone can be the chief example officer, right? And so, we have a couple of new people that came on, and one's going by Galaxy S6.
That's the phone.
Yeah, it's a phone call. And we did earlier, you weren't here, and Julian J, we did, everybody introduce themselves, say hello, because we have a real informal kind of family dinners here type of a situation. So you want to introduce yourself, calling in Galaxy X6, you mute yourself and say hello. Or Julian, you look like you're about to say something.
Hey all, my name is Julian. I'm from India, Bangalore.
Oh, very nice.
Julian?
Yeah, so I am into supply chain industry. So I have a team. I'm a manager. I have a team of 30 members. Basically, we do support EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa regions. I'm into hardware PC company, so we support supply chain activities.
Very
Great.
nice.
Thank you.
Very nice. Well,
Thanks
yeah,
for joining
welcome.
us.
Yeah, we're glad to. Galaxy 6. I saw you just unmuted yourself. What's the real name?
Okay. Hello.
Hello,
Hello. My name is Ruth.
Ruth.
I work with Michael.
Hey,
Oh,
Ruth.
okay.
I am in Ghana. I work with Michael. We're sort of in the same office.
Okay.
I manage a team of about 14 people, and I found this session very useful because the values is also very big in my company, and I found a few things I can incorporate. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, you've been on before, Ruth. We remember you. And what do we have here?
Yes, I've been on
Tammy says,
before.
thank you so much. I'm very fortunate to be in a company that adheres to their values. You want to talk about that, Tammy? You can go ahead and oh no, thank you. She said no. Okay, all right. It might be one of your values might be just being silent. So that so I can understand that. Well, basically that I think concludes it. Right now, what I'd like to do for those who would be interested is if you want to make some changes in your company, we prepared a particular offer, but it's exclusive for your company if you're US based or North American based or from UK or Canada, and you have 50 or more employees and you are a decision maker or part of that decision maker team. So would anybody here is anybody qualified for that I should present the offer to? So if you say that, say yes, and I'll present it. Otherwise we can just go back to our lives. So just put in the chat there, just say yes if you want me to present that. If not, then let you guys go back. Or if you have any other questions that you'd like to ask. Okay. So, all right. So that's it then, Shane. You want to any closing comments? I want to thank everybody for joining us here, and that's it.
Hey, listen, it's always a pleasure to see everybody. I really appreciate you taking some time to think, develop yourselves, invest in yourselves. And as I said, hopefully we've provided some value in that today. Reach out to us, of course, if you got any questions, always happy to answer those. And as I said, come back because every week we're going to touch on one of those different mechanisms, very much in the same light, give you some of the high-level overviews, some of our research experience, and then give you an opportunity to answer some questions. So hopefully we'll see you again in the next few weeks. Yeah, definitely. And also, too, if you, we'd like to let other people know about our webinars we have here going on. And certainly if once you've signed up to our webinars, we send you out a link that you can just simply click. You don't have to re-sign up if those already know. And that also, if you can send us some testimonials about if you're finding value here and you would like us to be able to share that so other people can find value too, and you want to help spread the wealth here, so go ahead and send me an email with that testimonial saying how much you enjoy what we've been doing here for you. We would appreciate that. And certainly, that would be good. And we would promote that so other people will come and really what we're trying to do here is just make the world a great place to do business with, right? That's what it is, and to work in. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Abraham. Thank you, Shane.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you guys again. Hey, Moshe, how are you doing, buddy?
You're muted. Unmute, Moshe.
Yeah, didn't I?
Now you're unmuted. There you go.
Now you are. Now you're back. All right, good to see everybody. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
There. Bye-bye.